Oh boy, Chris, how you doing?
Mr. Lemon, I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, man. Here we are. We're on Engagement Matters yet again. This is great. I hope to everybody joining us, this should be exciting. Hope your day is going well. I'm Brendan Lemon. I am one of the two knuckleheads on this show. Obviously, the other one is my very esteemed, intelligent, genius colleague and boss, Chris Kuba. What's up,
Keep
Chris?
keep going. That wasn't enough.
I think I should just keep
Feed the
keep
ego.
lauding you. Yeah, I
Yeah,
should just keep patting you on the back.
yeah. Please.
I should say, welcome to the stream. We're excited to have you. This month is an interesting one. The stream this time around, we're talking about brand battles and billion-dollar breakouts. That alliteration, brand battles and billion-dollar breakouts, the CPG disruption. So what do we mean by this? This is very interesting. I'll just introduce the topic. That'll kick it over to you, Chris, to kind of describe how we got here. But the topic basically is emerging and insurgent brands, rising popularity, and where they're coming from, how they're doing it, how they're upsetting the CPG space a little bit. And if you want to talk about sort of how we got here, I think that would be a good orientation for everybody watching the stream.
Yeah. I think we exhausted all of our knowledge about loyalty in the first two episodes, and we decided it was time to move on to something.
We shot our bolt, dude. We had two episodes. We brought Joy Dasgupta on, and she
dropped the mic. That was it.
Exactly. And we were like, "This is all there is to say about loyalty." We had the final word.
No, listen, that's not true. We could do lots and lots of stuff on loyalty. So there's been a lot of stuff in the press this last month. Bain and Co. published their annual list of insurgent brands. If you're in the CPG space and super nerdy like me, it's like Christmas morning. I just can't wait. I count it down. It's always full of tons of insights. And there was a small, tiny, itty-bitty acquisition by a major CPG called Pepsi of a prebiotic soda brand called Poppy. If you don't know it by now, or you haven't read that in the news yourself, breaking here right now on Engagement Matters, Pepsi buys Poppy. So we thought it was a good time to maybe talk a little bit about insurgent brands or emerging brands, challenger brands. They've been called a lot of things over the years, but
so this is
what we got here.
Yeah, this is the graphic real quick. If you guys are seeing it, this is the one that Bain & Company released. And it's kind of interesting to take a look at it because they were talking about new insurgents, existing insurgents, and how much of the market they're really taking up. And the first one I noticed, and if you're a longtime listener, you'll know, the first one I noticed on here was Athletic Brewing Company. I'm telling you, Andrew, we're going to get Andrew Katz on the show sooner or later. CMO of Athletic Brewing is going to end up on the show. But it's amazing to me how many of these are common parlance these days, like Feastables, Athletic Brewing Company, Magic Spoon, Motor City Pizza Co., Kodiak. I see Kodiak everywhere now. You go to a Myers back in Michigan, just like I was a few weeks ago. Kodiak is right there. Yeah. Catalina Crunch, I buy that. It's in my kitchen right now. Black Rifle Coffee Company, but even some of the up and coming, like the new insurgents, Mike's Hot Honey, huge brand, giant brand.
Mike's Hot Honey, I think we could spend a lot of time talking about specifically the way in which they've just come in and annihilated the market, or I guess created it, has been pretty incredible. I don't know about you. Have you had Mike's Hot Honey before?
I'm a huge fan, dude. Yeah, I get their hotter honey. Their hottest one is the one that I typically like to use.
Yeah, so we've been buying them for a long time. I'm sure I'm the reason they're doing so well. But as we were preparing for this and looking at this list, I went on their website, of course, and was shocked to see a new flavor, a partnership they're doing with Blue Diamond Almonds. And I don't want to jump too far ahead because I think we should talk a little bit about insurgent brands and why some of these brands are succeeding when others aren't failing. But you look at a brand like Mike's Hot Honey, where, 2 years ago, they were probably a single SKU, super laser focused, making lots of waves and just bringing that spice to honey. And now they're starting to get into the next maybe evolution of partnerships and looking to create more opportunities for consumers to try and bring in stalwart brands like Blue Diamond that probably benefits them as much as I think Mike's Hot Honey is benefiting Blue Diamond. So
I'll tell you
super,
what,
super cool stuff.
so not to foreshadow it too much, but it is interesting because I don't think I mean, look, I'm somebody who travels a bunch. I do comedy, go on the road, drive, love a road trip. I'm normally eating Blue Diamond stuff. I could buy at a gas station or whatever. I haven't thought about that brand, especially the way that I've thought about them since we saw that Mike's Hot Honey partnership was going on.
Yeah.
It's a really smart idea for both of them, actually. But
Yeah.
one of the ones listed there on the Insurgent Brands established sort of list was Poppi. And Poppi was, like you said, purchased for $1 billion with a B dollars.
You could even round up to 2 billion if you really wanted to.
Massive, right?
Well,
so what is going on? I guess maybe just to start, Chris, like what is going on in the space, man? Like CPG companies what do they not care? Do they not see the opportunity? What do you think is going on, which is allowing Insurgent Brands to really carve out a niche that not only is it's a niche to start, but becomes a massive brand like Liquid Death, another great one.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you really quick. When you think of what an Insurgent brand is, this is a fascinating question, I think. How do you think of these? What makes a brand an Insurgent brand in your mind?
I think they're independent from investment from a major. Look at this guy. I think they're independent from an investment from a major or established CPG company, like a consumer packaged goods, food and bev company. They're separate. They're independent. Maybe they have some relationship or affiliation at some point, but like they're slightly eating their lunch in the category. Like they're starting to grow. And I think that I think another characteristic is that they're typically big on social media. Like I notice a lot of these brands on social media first. Magic Spoon is a great example. Like I only now kind of see them in grocery stores, but originally it was the thing that you could only get online.
Yeah.
And they were majorly from Instagram.
Yeah. You define it the way that I would, which, and again, as a parent of 4 kids who are way cooler and tuned into trends in the world than me, I always just sort of like, oh, those are the brands that, are cool, and people that are tuned into culture are probably already aware of that. Then my kids have to pull me into later and make sure I understand. I mean, I think there's probably somewhere out there a formal definition. I'm sure Bain has it as they've released this list year over year. Formally, though, it's, these brands that are high growth, challenging incumbents and essentially unlocking new opportunities, right? There's a disruptive nature to what they're doing. But the reality is these are brands that are not owned by the big guys who are stealing market share, but still maybe have a small percentage of share themselves.
But I think this is what's critical about it, and more to the point for Engagement Matters, they are really good at getting engagement. Yeah. These are brands that if we were to look at, and I don't know, I mean, I'm just bringing this up now because we do prep for believe it or not, we do prep for the show. And I didn't bring this up at all in prep, but I'm bringing it up now.
Oh boy.
Which is that I bet that if you took a, share of conversation poll for a lot of these brands, they would have an outsized share of conversation versus other competitors in their category.
Yeah.
That sure. I don't know what other sparkling water companies are doing, but I can tell you what Liquid Death is doing. And I'm not someone who follows anything in that category, although I do consume a lot of those beverages. Yeah. They are really good at getting engagement.
Yeah. And I think some of that comes back to a direct-to-consumer channel as well. These are the brands that tend to be laser focused and building relationships with consumers directly, selling directly online. Again, not exclusively. Many of these brands you'll find in some form or function of a retail partner like yours. I know I tend to, and it just, survey of one or anecdotal evidence, I suppose, is I tend to see a lot of these brands, and maybe this is a testament to some retailers who are doing better with them than others, is, I see them at Whole Foods, especially the health conscious ones. I see them at retailers like Wegmans. It feels like they may start off direct to consumer. They quickly then move into the next chapter, which is select distribution, until the rest of the world, people like myself, clue in, and you can start finding them in mass grocery. So
I mean, and this is
direct to consumer is a big part of what makes them successful and how they've managed to grow.
This is what happened with Poppi. I mean, this is basically Poppi's trajectory. Yeah. And interestingly, and again, not I swear, I just want them to sponsor me so badly. Athletic
Go ahead,
Brewing
do it.
Company,
Yeah,
once
yeah.
again, is like, this is their trajectory, is that they've managed, and I think a lot of these companies are operating this way, to figure out how to do both a direct to consumer and a retail, that you can go into Trader Joe's and buy Athletic Brewing Company beer. You can do that at almost any, you go down the street, I go to Whole Foods, I go to Key Foods, whatever's in the neighborhood, I can pick up Athletic Brewing Company beer. But like I keep mentioning, I'm a member because I can get a great deal, maybe even a better deal than I can at the local retailer. And I get, and this is important, not just a better deal in terms of financially, but I get access to a whole bunch of other beers that they do not have at the local grocery store. Only members can have access to them.
Yeah.
So they've really,
Are you
again, figured out how to get that engagement, but that's DDC, exactly like you're describing.
Yeah.
There's a direct-to-consumer component. Same thing with Magic Spoon. They're really good at doing that.
Yeah. I think and again, the Bain article goes into some of this as well. But overall, there's also this consistent formula that exists between some of these brands who are, existing from years prior or new, and overall where I think there's success that keeps happening. And this is important because my next question is, what do, maybe non-insurgent brands, what can some of the larger brands who should have a head start in some of these places do to operate more like an insurgent brand? I think that's a really interesting conversation. But there were three things that floated to the top. And again, I know Bain talks about. One is they're addressing unmet consumer needs, right? So when you think about an opportunity in the marketplace, these brands seem to fill a void that isn't always obvious, right? Or it would have been filled. Again, Mike's Hot Honey. I don't know if I would have ever imagined making hot or honey spicy. I'm sure somebody did, but definitely not at scale. The second thing is they're often founder led. You and I did talk about this in some of our prep for it, right? There is definitely a sense of these brands as tuned into the culture, or as popular and hip as most of them, their brand and marketing attempts allow them to be. I think it's also a reflection of the person who actually starts the company. What's in their DNA? Who are they? Why are they popular? And again, in the world of social media and influencer marketing, some brands can pull this off, larger brands, but there's a gap in the authenticity factor. Whereas I think because of the way these brands are born and the just utter sort of grit and desire of their founders, I think it carries through to the brand itself. So I think it's two things. One is there's something about them that's unique and different. I think the best ones obviously have tuned into a great brand feel, which I'm sure they've spent lots of time and money and energy creating, and then their representations or personifications maybe of the people who started them and the passion that they poured into them. And I feel like that's probably true for a lot of brands that don't make the insurgent brand list or haven't escalated to that next level. And so again, I think the other two pieces are really around sustained growth, right? Like these are brands that got past selling at the farmers markets, or starting an Instagram account, or for some people, not me, a TikTok account. Brendan, I know you're a huge fan of TikTok, and one day I'll join, I promise.
Dude, I have sent Chris so many. Just this week, I've sent you like 3 TikToks that are fantastic breakdowns of like brand presences. And Chris is like, I don't have TikTok. And I'm like,
I'll get it in a week when it goes to Instagram. I'll catch up on society.
Yeah. So okay. So hold on. I wanted to I want to read into a subtext that you didn't say, but I think is important, which is you're like, hey, it's founder led. The clarity of vision, I think, is part of what makes each one of the brands on that Bain list, almost every single one of them, I would say, has a really crisp sense of identity. And the thing that's fascinating about that is that each of those brands, I think, means something about you if you're purchasing. Like if I'm buying Kodiak, so for people who don't know, Kodiak is a series of mostly breakfast foods, but they're like pancake mix and muffin mix or ready-made muffins or Belgian waffles or oatmeal or like whatever those things are. They're really high protein foods though. They have way more protein than you normally. These are like buckwheat pancakes. They're like really strong, high, like fortified, really high protein. I'm somebody, if I'm buying that product, who sees myself as that product helps me get a sense of self. And I feel like I know marketers have talked branding and like self-identity almost to death, but each of these brands is doing a really good job of this.
Yeah.
It used to be the case before Liquid Death came around that if I wanted to go to a bar but not drink, I had I would say Liquid Death and Athletic Brewing I had two options. I could either get just water or like a soda, and it would be, if it was, maybe it would serve to me in a Voss water bottle and I look like I'm a pinkies up person. A dude who's like, yeah, I just want to go crush it with the homies. Can't go out and be like, yeah, can I get a Perrier? Like it's not something they could do. And Athletic Brewing Company, same thing. It gave people a different identity in the category. Liquid Death nailed that. And they did it very interestingly because they took a lot of product and they just gave it to people who are on podcasts.
Yeah.
Like something to drink while we're hanging out. Liquid Death is what it is. I know Mark Maron specifically is like a really good one. His WTF podcast, they sponsored him for like a long time. That's how I learned about that brand. Really smart, really interesting idea that a lot of clarity of who the brand is and how they're operating can help deliver that message to exactly that audience really well. I think they're thinking outside of they're thinking like Insurgents. They're thinking like around what can we do?
Ruthlessly focused on the consumer, right? They are unapologetic about being consumer centric. You've also just caused me to have an identity crisis. I thought I was a bro and I love Perrier, and now I feel like you're telling me those two things don't go together.
Dude, you're not a bro. Bro, do you even lift? Do you even lift, Chris?
I was gonna make the joke, and then we'll get back on topic here. Our producers, I think we have producers. They'll hate us for all of the sideways winding commentary here, but nope, it's gone. Thought's gone, Brendan. I don't know where I was going to go with it. Thank God. Let's get back to business.
Here we go. All right, good.
Okay, so here's the question. So we've got, there's an unmet need. They're founder-led. That culture is in their DNA. They've maybe ascended to this level of growth that's sustainable. Maybe if they start as a simple single SKU, easy, product, I feel like oftentimes, they're testing and learning, and as long as they're being consumer centric, you'll start to see extensions from it. So here's my question in the last minutes we have is before I hit this, there's a lot of small brands that maybe have those things that we don't end up on Bain's list, but these are obviously the difference makers. So if I'm a brand manager at a large organization, again, having been in this industry for 20 years, there's a lot of time that goes into finding unmet consumer needs. There is maybe not founder led, but there's usually a leader in place that's embodies the DNA of that brand, right? Whether it's Mountain Dew in, maybe a comparison to Liquid Death, those two maybe target audiences are similar. Obviously they've got access to, deeper pockets. And hopefully, if anyone can grow it with their retail partnerships and distribution networks, there are brands that can. So it's interesting, one, that, there are pieces of why can't some of the times the big brands do it? Why do they end up acquiring a company like Poppi? Or, again, Coca-Cola just launched Simply Pop, I think, as their, answer to Poppi, and Olipop, who raised like $50 million in a Series C recently. Like, there's recognition that consumer behaviors are changing and evolving and adapting to, demand from that don't want as much sugary drinks. But through that, it was just the tenacity of the founder of Poppi to see it. So long way around to get to my question for you, which is like, so if I'm a brand, maybe I have some of these same focuses and, we're trying to instill the DNA, and I really, love brand X. What do they do? How do they compete? What are the options? What is it to be? How can big brands maybe be more Insurgent like?
Dude, this is the one. So this is the TikTok you didn't watch, by the way, is that I thought this was incredibly interesting because big brands, we had an argument in the lead up to this show, because I was saying, I think that there's a lot of groupthink that can potentially go on at a large organization that would prevent them from wanting to take the risks and be edgy, direct, personable in the way that an Insurgent brand would be. But not all big brands are like that. And you
Right.
made that point. And one of them that is doing a great job is Doritos. Doritos has a great locked in audience of people who enjoy it. And they recently just ran a contest for who could make the most engaging Doritos like video on TikTok. And two guys who had never made any advertising content before in their lives made this Doritos video, and it blew up, and people thought it was hilarious. Doritos loved it. These guys won a huge award for it. They not only won an award for it, they won the contest, but they also won an award for this.
Yeah.
And those guys are now in the space. Like, other brands want to hire them to do this. And that cost Doritos how much? Not that much. They could have gone and hired a major advertising firm to come up with all this stuff, put an ad on the Super Bowl or sports or whatever, but they were able to get in touch with an audience at a fraction of the cost. The second one, real quick, I think, and this is the one that I argued in. I know we're running out of time, so I want to be quick about this. Dr. Squatch, which is an Insurgent brand and was on that Bain list, has gotten so much attention because they funded a series of stand-up comedy shows around the country where they filmed really high quality, good stand-up comics and put out the content. All it says is Dr. Squatch in the background. That's it. What is stopping a major CPG from doing that? Like, they could easily go and do that and would have gotten massive amounts of impressions at a fraction of a normal CPM.
Yeah.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah. We got in a big fight over this because I think my position is I think a lot of big brands are doing interesting things like that. The example I used was Gatorade. This is a years ago promotion. In my hometown growing up, there was a hockey game during my high school years that never ended because there was a, horrible accident on the ice. All of, us old men are now old and out of shape. Gatorade brought them back together and basically said, hey, as Gatorade, a brand that stands for hydration and energy and athletics, we're going to bring these two teams back that didn't finish the game to now finish the game. And they did this amazing YouTube series, which basically was all about getting these guys back in shape to take the ice and play again. And so while I agree with you, I think that kind of like gritty tenacity, guerrilla type thinking probably has to exist by the nature of availability of budgets. I think it exists. I just think they need to be more careful with how they use them. Whereas, sometimes when when you get into a larger brand's budgets, I don't want to say it's monopoly money. They take it very seriously. There's too many places to spend it. They've got to decide retail media, versus television ads. And your Doritos example is a fantastic one where, the Crash the Super Bowl program that they've done, for a long time now where, hey, we're going to have consumers submit these commercials and then the winner basically gets distributed online. I think are still smart ways of operating it. I think there's a comment. I think there's
some questions.
There's a LinkedIn comment. We want to take it. We want to splash it up on screen. Powers that be.
We're really about you. We're about the viewers. We're about this show's about you.
Yeah.
Bang. All right, here we go. Bridget Daly asks, can you talk a bit more about how consumer preferences have shifted in favor of Insurgent brands? Very interesting. You want to take that one, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, and I think there was a similar comment up above that actually nailed this one, right? The consumer behaviors, I think, in maybe when these Insurgent brands or challenger brands, emerging brands first started coming up, were seemingly very correlated to a deeper connection, maybe brand values, quality of the products. And now I think it's not only that, like Mark B's, it's not only about that, but I think this comes back to some of the founder ideals that consumers want to be attached to, that allows us or, causes us to continue to want to purchase. I also think what's fascinating, because we've done a previous live stream on value, right? And like cost consciousness and what's going on in the economy today, and, cost of eggs. Although I heard it's supposed to come down, supposedly coming. Is it coming down in Brooklyn yet, Brendan? Are the cost of eggs coming down yet?
Dude, I saw them for $11 in Michigan the other day. I don't think they're
coming.
I don't think they're coming down anywhere, buddy.
The idea, though, I think there's this weird parallel existence that happens. Some of these Insurgent brands, even in a cost-conscious world, while they need to be cost competitive, I think because the unmet need they're filling and the good for you maybe mentality and the founder led DNA that instills it in you, I think that's one of those places where you're willing to spend a little bit more. You're willing to go buy that prebiotic, good for you soda for twice the cost of the other soda because maybe you believe in the story and it's something different and it's innovative and new. So
I just to steelman that point even harder. There's a brand that I love, not food, not CPG necessarily, but a company called GoRuck. And GoRuck is like kind of an Insurgent exercise outdoor brand. I bought a $400 backpack from GoRuck, and it's the greatest backpack I've ever owned. It performs like a $400 backpack.
You are batting 100% on live streams and talking about GoRuck and Athletic Brewing Company. I'm convinced this is all about you just getting a influencer deal.
I am trying every avenue possible. I am trying to get an influencer deal with these guys.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about sustainability. There's a question on sustainability, Brendan. You want to take that one?
Yeah, the question, how can Insurgents brands maintain sustainable growth? Like, is that possible to do? I think it's funny, man, because this is part of the reason I think you might question whether or not it is possible is because they're getting acquired. Like, I think it's possible for a large growth. I mean, we argued about this a little bit in the prep for this show, but I think that it makes sense. Why is Pepsi spending almost $2 billion to acquire Poppi? It's because Poppi is going to eat their lunch.
Yeah.
Like, people want a more probiotic, pro-healthy drink than a typical Pepsi. I mean, some people, obviously, Pepsi's a huge brand. They're still going to sell a lot of their products, but they're missing out on a massive market shift. And they realize now that it is cheaper to purchase Poppi than it is to try and build their own or compete with their own brand. I mean, we'll see what happens with Coke, Simply Pop or whatever that is.
Yeah.
But like, I really think that for some of these brands, I think there is a lot of sustainable growth that can happen. Liquid Death, I think, is going to become a cornerstone.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be a brand that isn't going to go away. Yeah. We'll see what happens with Magic Spoon. Also, I think same thing. But Kodiak, as far as I know, is like, they're only growing. I see only more product categories coming from this.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all hungry for some different ideas to put on our plate too.
I think that the one thing, I just want to say this real quick. The one thing that I didn't say that I think that if they made some intelligent decisions on how to increase loyalty, just like Athletic Brewing Company did, I think you'll see that will be really locking the sustainable growth for some of these companies.
This segment brought to you by Snipp Loyalty, how we can help you, your Insurgent brand, drive more sales. Great plug there, Brendan. Okay, so let's wrap up. I know we're at the end of our time. I think we'll do this again. I actually would love to bring some Insurgent brands on. So I think before we talk again in April,
if anybody knows Andrew Katz and how to get a hold of him, I've done it for him, man. I want him on the show.
Listen, that is your Everest. I hope to one day you can go on a run with your GoRuck bag with Andrew Katz and drink
That's
together.
what we should do. That'll be we'll talk to Ratika. We'll build some social media content about me running GoRucking on a pilgrimage to Andrew Katz's house. And then
you make GoRuck? Is it a verb? You say GoRucking? Is that
you go rucking, bro.
Okay, cool.
Let's go.
All right, so let me try to I don't know if we hit all these points directly in our ramblings, but when we talk about what big brands maybe you can start to think about or what these Insurgent brands have that are special, a couple things for me. One, I think there's this element of being your brand, and as you're hiring people to work on that brand, you've got to make sure they embody the DNA of it. There's a reverse thing happens here. I think Insurgent brands culture or DNA is built out of the founder first, right? I think at brands, if you're going to go work for Mountain Dew or Doritos or some other brand, it probably makes sense that you're passionate about what that brand stands for. And that's not to say really smart people with MBAs and have come up in the CPG industry who don't align with those same values can't also be really successful and manage it and spend their media dollars and get consumers like, I don't need to wear lipstick to probably sell lipstick, but it couldn't hurt either, right?
But it's not a widget, is your point.
Yeah.
You're not selling widgets.
Yeah. So I think if you're, I think that's one thing that just didn't you think about the importance of people in any organization. That's one. Two, we didn't talk about this at all, but the importance of just an omni-channel and direct to consumer business can't be understated. There was a poll, I think Snipp, the marketing team, put out around like what are the most important things. By and far, that was the number one most important thing. Like the results of the poll, everyone agreed on. I think simple things, investing in first party data, driving insights, understanding your consumers, using those insights. If you're going to go create product extensions, if you're going to go figure out a new entry or to try and uncover those unmet needs, like talk to your customers who are already buying from you and get there. And then this one, I'll say, slightly tongue in cheek.
Engage with them.
Yeah, engage with them. And then my last point, I add a few more, but I'll skip them because I know we're really out of time here, is I think there's like a grittiness, not just because I'm a Dan Campbell Detroit Lions fan, but there is a grit and a tenacity and a maybe risk taking that occurs in these brands. And I think sometimes, oftentimes, at these large organizations, there can be a comfort or, there's risk. And I think the legal teams at these large organizations want to mitigate that. And I would never encourage people to not listen to their legal teams. But I do think there's an element of, taking risks, trying new things, being gritty, leaning in, really, really compete if you want to be a little more insurgent like. So
love that.
Those are my quick takeaways. Brent, anything else for you? And then we'll.
Nope. I think engagement matters, and engagement matters. We're going to be back on April 30th for the next episode. We thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Brendan Lemon. This was Chris Kuba. Take it easy, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next month.